Welcome to our CEO Insights sessions. We do 2 of these per month on the People Strategy podcast, and I cannot wait for you to join us this week as we chat with a CEO about key insights of how they've implemented a people strategy in their business. Join me in welcoming our guest for this week. Welcome back to the People Strategy Podcast. My name is Tracy Austin, and we are chatting today with Tarek Kamil. Tarek is the CEO and founder of Circle, and Circle is an artificial intelligence-powered communication solution. What I so love about this conversation is that Tarek really focuses on his background, which is a technologist. So he's really looking at this and saying, how do we use technology to drive better outcomes? And that is the problem that he is looking to solve, is to solve that problem of communication overload. So welcome to the People Strategy Podcast. Tarek, welcome to the People Strategy Podcast. And I'm so excited to share your story and your journey with our listeners.
Thanks, Tracy. It's good to talk to you.
Absolutely. And you've had a journey for kind of where you've been to where you're going. And I'm curious, why is personalized communication so important to you, especially when it really engages staff?
So I think for many reasons. Number one, time. So if you think about all the different currencies in the world, sterling, the dollar, the yen, it doesn't really matter. The most valuable currency today is people's time. And so people, whether they're consciously or subconsciously, they're gravitating towards things that save them time. So let me go way back. I don't know how old your average listener is, but Blockbuster was get in the car, go to the store, walk around. I don't remember if I've seen this. Is this any good? And you would spend a long time there. And then you go wait, you check out. Sometimes you go, you're looking for a movie that just came out. They're out of the 10 copies they have. You got to go home, you're mad. Then you got to go back to drop it off. So you don't want any late fees. Don't forget to rewind. You remember these days?
Yes.
So Netflix comes across, and their big value add is the same as Amazon's and Hulu and Spotify, is they're just saving you time. They know you. They don't care the channel that you're viewing Netflix on. They have recommendations that are really intelligent. You don't have to drive anywhere. Just go to your device. It's one of the things that I picked up on years and years and years ago, is that engagement starts with being tailored to me. So it's going to save me time. It knows me. It's learning about me. All the technologies that you know and love, I mentioned a number of them previously, they're all growing like gangbusters because they save you time. And that's it. So we have so many demands on our time, whether it's personally, kind of the Netflix model, or professionally with work. The fact that you're seeing the same communication on all these channels, open enrollment, right? Hey, open enrollment, Tracy, don't forget, it starts March 1st. They're sending you emails. It's on the intranet. It's in Slack and Teams and all these other channels. Yeah, I already read this. Why am I having to see the same thing over and over and over again? So when you start thinking about personalization, marketers would talk about personas, but we go down to the individual, just like Netflix goes down to the individual. That's how we should treat our employees, like individuals. What do you need to know? What do you want to know that you haven't already seen somewhere else? So that's a super long answer to your very first question. I apologize. I'm sure we've lost every listener because of that, but I'll get better, I promise.
No, I think we're good. I think we're good. Because here's the deal. How do we engage staff really has to do with what is important to them. And I know for me it's like, as I've grown in my career and I've grown in my business, guess what gets less and less and less is time. As I had kids, guess what gets less and less and less is time. And so it's like, how do we really understand who our people are and what's important to them? Not just the what's important at work, but like, hey, what's your big bucket list item on your list? We just talked about New Zealand and a trip to Iceland and those things that are important. But then shifting back into, if we really know our staff, we can meet them exactly where they're at within exactly what is important to them in the medium that they really want to use it. And that is important to our listener.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. So we think about the world of work really in two ways. You've got information the company needs you to know. Open
Mhm.
enrollment's a great example of that. Message from the CEO, we're making an acquisition, new product announcement, earnings announcement. These are not optional. You work here, you need to know these things. Great. What about everything else? So this goes back to your question of how do you really engage people at scale? I need to know what you as a human being care about. Open enrollment's not on the table. This is required reading for you. You have to
Mhm.
know this, but you like to travel. What about community service? What about all these optional things that we're doing as a company? And I want to make sure that things that resonate with you are front and center for you because they're important to you. And the things that aren't important to you, they should be further down if you can access them if you would like. That's not as important to you. And that's exactly the tech that Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Spotify are all using. They make you feel as though you're the only viewer, watcher, subscriber, reader, fill in the blank. As far as you know, they only have one subscriber, right? To Netflix because
Mhm.
everything is so tailored to you. And that's how your company should make you feel as an employee. They
Right.
value me, they know me, they're doing all these cool things. I don't have to search for it. I'm not getting channel anxiety by having to look through every channel to make sure I'm not missing anything. So it's just been a long evolution. I don't know, if think back 30 years, it before we had I don't even know when email started, 35 years. Uh, it was a manila like envelope that they want a memo to be seen because this is before email. They put it in an envelope and then it goes around from people's desk to desk. You have to sign that
They
you
were
read this.
signing on the whole
Yes,
thing. Yes.
that's
Yes.
correct, right?
Yeah.
So eventually email shows up. It's and it's amazing. So
Right.
that is introduced into the work world. Great. And then what happens is an intranet because the web shows up late
Right.
90s, early 2000s. Hey, this is cool. We can have this inside of our company. Great. Then you've got technologies like Yammer and Skype and now Teams and Slack for certain workforces, healthcare, manufacturing, retail. You need mobile to reach
Mhm.
deskless workers. So you've got all these channels that have evolved. The problem is they're all disconnected,
Right.
creating crazy amounts of work on the internal communications team within any organization because they have to go feed all these
Yeah.
channels.
And I think what's interesting with all these channels, as you were talking, I'm sitting here going, like, when I would get those manila envelopes early in my career, I would take a couple minutes and be like, ooh, who had this before? Who signed it? And our brains go off into these 27 different spots that lead to really unproductive behavior. At least if you're like me and you're like, oh, wait, I opened this email and now I'm off on this rabbit chase to something that really isn't the most important priority of my day. So not only are we not engaging staff where they need to be engaged, we're not ensuring that we're keeping them on this productivity path to
Yes.
ensure that they're truly getting done what they need to for the organization and for themselves to feel like that they win at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're spot on. The number one complaint is from employees is you send way too much email. Number one, and it's not even close. It's not that they don't like email. It's that it's not targeted. It's not relevant. I've already seen this. So it's a waste of time. And
Right.
you're sending important communication to the most congested channel of all time, which is their inbox.
Right.
Anyone can get in their inbox. Marketers are in their inbox. Family, friends, fantasy football's in their inbox. So is a
And
message from the CEO. It
right.
seems odd that
Right.
this has evolved this way, but that's the state of affairs in most companies.
And there's this key distinction between need to know and want to know. And this you explained a little bit, right? Like our need to know is definitely here's the need to know based on you being an employee at the organization. Here's a need to know based on the department that you're in, and no other department needs to know that. Here's a
Correct.
need to know based on the job that you are in that no other job necessarily needs to know. And then here's the need to know based on the team and the connecting the dots between those. So now we've got, I don't know how many layers I just laid out here, but we've got the need to know based on all these key things. And then we have the want to know, and that's going to be different for each person. So how do you really engage staff in a way that it hits all those boxes, but doesn't make it so that they never see things that could truly interest and intrigue them and make their work life much more fulfilling?
Yeah. So, my background is a technologist. My background isn't internal communication. It's not organizational psychology. It is how to use technology to drive better outcomes. In this case, it is when we think outcomes, it's I want our employees to be more engaged, I want them to be more productive, I want them to stay with us longer. So if I can reduce attrition, that's what I'm looking for in terms of better outcomes. So how do we do that? So as I'm thinking through this problem, it dawns on me that unlike a marketing exercise where 20% off this weekend is a marketing exercise, if somebody doesn't go and take the 20% off discount, no one's going to lose their job or their benefits or find themselves in financial hardship
Correct.
because they didn't go to the Gap this weekend. That's fine. Internally, we have a different set of criteria. There is this need to know set of information. It's not optional. So here is the biggest problem with what we're talking about is I need you to know this. How do I make sure you got this message without spamming you, without overwhelming you, without pushing the same communication to every single channel? I don't know how you want to consume it. That's how every company operates. And that's why people tune out things they're supposed to know because they're trained. We don't really care if you've seen this before. In fact, we can't. We don't know that Tracy's already read this. So everything
Right.
is about the channel. It's not about the recipient. And so
Right.
to really deliver that experience, how we think about it from a technology perspective. So when people roll out broadcast, which is the internal communication suite, it isn't replacing what they're doing. It is intelligence that is sitting behind and supporting what they're doing. It's almost like a traffic cop. So instead of open enrollment, that's an email, it goes to all employees, and then we're going to post to the internet and all these things. It would just post to one place, broadcast, right? The platform. And then broadcast is waiting for Tracy. As
Mhm.
soon as you go to any of these channels, it builds a real time personalized experience for you based on what you need to know and want to know that you haven't already seen somewhere else. So, the key, the answer to this problem, and it took me a long time to figure this out, was you need the intelligence, you need the traffic cop to then, you've got 10,000 employees. We need to deliver 10,000 personalized experiences across any channel that that person hits. We need to know that Tracy's already read this piece of content over here on the internet. So on her newsletter, it's not going to show up. That's it. Now, that's a
Right.
lot easier for me to say than it is to pull off. There's a lot of technology and AI and machine learning behind the scenes, but the benefits are unbelievable in terms of
Right.
increased engagement.
And one of the benefits there is essentially I will start to gain trust in you to appropriately utilize my time, which
Mhm.
again, time's currency. That's one of the most important resources that we have. And if I can trust that you're going to appropriately utilize my time, I then am going to deliver at a higher level because I'm going to need to know exactly what I need to know to make the decisions to produce in a way that meets what my personal goals are and my professional goals because they get woven together in a really beautiful way in order for us to hit our team and our organization goals. And then that way, I'm not hyper deleting items, especially with AI right now, that is like sending me 7,000 things I do not need to know within that, hey, now I know if this shows up, it is actually truly important to me for me to respond to. So I don't have 700 emails in my inbox where, 650 of them are junk.
That's right. And this experience that we're talking about today, you've got some really innovative companies that are seeing the future and they're early to kind of get behind this personalized experience across channels. It's not going to be optional very, very soon. Why I say that is as you think about the changing demographics of the workforce, they're all coming in Gen Z, Gen Y. I can't even keep up with the gens, but they have all grown up with Facebook, Twitter,
Mhm.
Instagram, Snapchat, Hulu, Spotify, Amazon. They don't know anything else.
Right.
So my daughter, she started her first real job out of college about 18 months ago. So she's there and she calls me and says, what is going on with all the email? 'Cause they're just not used to that. It's just like they're sending me things that don't matter to me, don't apply to me. This is odd. I said, and it's interesting hearing her perspective because I've grown up with email. I don't know anything else. I'm just used
Right.
to it. She's not. And all of these people entering the workforce, your future employees, they don't want that experience. They're not used to that experience. They're used to Netflix. How do we deliver that Netflix type experience to your workforce? That's technology. That's how Netflix is already doing it. We're just saying, let's take a flavor of that and apply it to internal communication. And when you do, it's going to be Blockbuster versus Netflix. There's no comparison to the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we had kind of chatted about ahead of time that I thought was so intriguing and interesting to this, since so many of our listeners utilize predictive index and really paying attention to how folks communicate, right? Like, is this somebody that really talks out loud to make decisions? Is this somebody that's really analytical? Is this somebody that's very process oriented or somebody that can just pick up and go? But when we look at that in terms of communication, it is impacting every single one of those areas in very different ways. If we have a very process oriented person that's going to get overwhelmed, guess what? Now we just made them more productive because we removed the noise. Is it the
Yes.
same for somebody that can move really fast? Yes, but to a lesser level in the fact that they can much more easily maneuver themselves through that noise than someone else. So it's really looking at that and saying it's the customization based on who our folks are, what they need to know, and ensuring that we've built trust with them so that they can make significant decisions. And, as I look at this and say, hey, we've got organizations that are growing significantly. I mean, most of the companies we work with are private equity backed. So we're going from 30 employees to 200 to 300 employees over a very short period of time. So, how does this personalized communication impact organizational growth?
I think it's foundational. So, one of the things that we see, one of the things that we look for are companies that are growing quickly. And so, if you are growing really fast, it's even more crucial that your foundation is solid. Once you are large and you try to make big changes, it takes a long time. And so, the earlier in the process that you can be thinking about foundational things like communication, you have a great strategy and a plan for how you're going to leverage technology to drive engagement, productivity, talent retention. It's one of these, it's like compounding interest. The
Mhm.
sooner you start saving, the more you're going to have when you retire. It's exactly that philosophy, except it's around your people.
For that compounding interest as we think about our people, which means, hey, we're valuing them much more because we're valuing their time, and with that they're valuing us for taking care of them. And I think So often I look at organizations when they're growing so fast and say, okay, so guess what? As we grow, we're going to amplify whatever's currently here. So we're going to either amplify the great communication or we're going to amplify the not so great communication. We're going to amplify an HR department that was kind of built together with spaghetti that is brittle and going to break, or we've built it on this strong, concrete foundation. What do we want to amplify here? And so I love the way you said that because I think it definitely does that.
Yes, I think you said it much more eloquently than I did, but it is going to amplify. So as companies grow, wherever you're strong, that's going to help you, and wherever you're weak, it's really going to hurt you. So the earlier you can get ahead of these things, the more it will pay off as you continue to grow.
I'm curious because I always get super curious about beliefs, especially around communication. And so you work with, a significant number of organizational leaders at both large and small organizations. And so what do you find is the most important belief that leaders have that impacts their people?
It's the same question I tell young people. I told this to my daughters when you're being interviewed for a job, way that you want to end that, because they'll always ask at the end. They'll say, "Do you have any questions for us?"
Yeah.
You should always ask a number of questions, but this one should be included, and this will answer your question. So you're in the interview, the company's talking to you. Do you have any questions for us? And the answer is, I do have a question. If you were your CEO, I want you to rank the following three things in order of importance: your people, your product, or your customers.
Mm-hmm.
What would your CEO say? And any company that doesn't put people first is not where you want to be working, because you're just a means to an end. They don't understand that the people are the business. And that's it. That is the common thread that leaders who kind of see the future and they understand the value of internal communication and delivering these amazing personalized experiences, they value their people. It's empathy. How would I want to be treated? That's it. It's that simple.
Thank you so much for that. So, as you reflect back on our conversation today for our listeners, what is one soundbite that you want to ensure our listeners heard?
I think we covered a lot of really interesting pieces. It's probably, if it really depends on the role of the listener. So if these are people leaders, then it will make your life easier if you start thinking about these foundational things like communication now versus later. And it is an easy thing to push off. So I would say that's really important. I would say another soundbite might be empathy. How do you want to be treated? Treat your people that way. Just be a good human. And the ROI case, which I think people leaders often have a hard time making, can be made pretty easily. So let's say, for example, you've got an organization of 1,000 employees and you're trying to argue for some tech to help us deliver better experiences, more relevant communication. It's really hard to quantify gains in productivity, decreases in attrition. A lot of it's arts and crafts. But when you look at the cost, how I would justify that is, hey, for the cost of one intern, we will have X, Y, and Z. If I'm a people leader and I'm talking to my CFO or my CEO and I want to do this, say, here's why. This is coming, whether we want it or not, because the workforce is demanding it. So the sooner we get ahead of it, the better. And for the cost of one intern, you just translate the cost of the software into an intern or a half an FTE or a full-time employee. We get all of this benefit. Now, there is no leader I know, CFO or CEO or otherwise, COO, that's going to say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Of course it makes sense. We've got 1,000 employees and you're saying, I get all this benefit for the cost of an intern. That's how I would justify and pitch the ROI to these leaders, where if you need someone to sign off on money, that's how I would think
Awesome.
about that too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm really challenging our leaders and our listeners to really think about empathy and to really think about how is it that I can really personalize and connect with my folks through communication? Tarek has some amazing insights from that conversation. And here's the top 3 insights that I took away. One is to give people the exact information they need in the right timing for them to make the decisions to have a win in their job. And so the people strategy around this is that we need to communicate with people the way they need to be communicated with. So, what is the result that we are looking for at the end? And then we only give them that specific communication in the channel that they want it. So, Tarek uses artificial intelligence to do this through different platforms. One of the things that we use specifically at Elevated Talent Consulting as a people strategy is the predictive index, where we're really looking at how do folks want to be communicated with and ensuring that we are delivering specifically in that way. So if we have someone that really likes to be communicated with verbally, we may send a video. If we have someone that really needs that on their calendar and the to do on their calendar, we may send a calendar invite. So the people strategy is connect with folks exactly where they're at to lead them the way that they need to be led. What is the result of that? The result of that is less overwhelm and increased productivity and results. The second insight that I had from the conversation with Tarek was creating a Netflix for internal communication. And it's looking at that and saying, "Hey, how are we as an organization going to meet our staff exactly where they're at?" Those of us that have been in the business field for a long time and in conversations know that guess what? Email is the way that things run. However, is it the most effective? No, absolutely not. So, as a people strategy, how do we ensure that we are giving that communication in the exact way that folks need it? Whether that is, are we shifting things to Slack? Are we using email for certain things? Are we using apps for certain things like a lever or a lattice? So what are we using in order to communicate with folks in very specific ways and ensure that it is not over communicating or sending the same thing over and over again? And that result is we're compounding our interest of trust by the way that we're very specifically communicating. Then the third key insight that I had from our conversation with Tarek was really the importance. What Tarek stated is rank the following in the order of importance: people, products, or customers. And he utilized this as an interview question. And why this was so insightful to me was we need to ensure that we are truly matching what is most important to us from our personal values to that of the organization. And as a people strategy, how are the core values of the organization truly built into every aspect of the organization, including in that communication? And the result is that we're aligning with people to create those results for the organization. So the clearer and more concise our communication is, and the clearer and more concise our values are aligned, the more likely we are going to want to do that work inside of the organization. So, a final challenge for you is really to take a look at your internal communication process and rate how well do we do communicating exactly what needs to happen without noise that slows down the decision making. So, for example, you may be CCing a whole bunch of people on emails that really don't need it. One other challenge would be, is there another way to do communication that allows you to get the exact right information in front of the right people in a timely manner? With that, thank you so much for listening to the People Strategy Podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to connect with you. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Tracy, Traci Austin, and at our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you'd love to learn more about our process, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your feedback with us through a review. Have a fantastic day.